Psalm 84. When I came in, the guys at the back said, have you got a title? And I was like, not really. But I suppose if you're going to have one, is this: better is one day with Jesus than 1,000 anywhere else. Better is one day with Jesus. And that's really what's happening in this psalm. It's an amazing psalm, so we're going to split it up and just look at it this morning. I used to love going to my grandparents' house when I was little. I know some of the kids are in this morning. If you got grandparents, going to grandparents' houses is the best thing ever, isn't it? Because you get completely spoiled. And when we go through the door, you have to go through a bit of the tradition, don't you? Of, oh, you've grown really tall and all that sort of stuff. And you don't care about that as a kid, do you? What you want to get to is the sweets. Yeah, the dinner. And then for me, this one's going to sound really odd to those who are a bit younger. Those who are a bit older will understand. For me, the best bit was in the afternoon, after all the boring talking had been done, and Grandad went to the TV, and he used to look at me and he used to say, Matthew, what video would you like to watch? We never had a video player, okay? So there's some of them are younger, like, what's even one of those? It's like Netflix on a disc, on a thing that you have to put in, okay? That's what it is. But we never had a video player, so the time used to come, and Grandad had a whole wall of videos, and he'd be like, which one do you want to watch? I'd be like, yes! I get first because I was the oldest sibling, the oldest brother, so I get to choose a video to watch. And there was only one, and you're going to think I'm really weird. There was only one video I wanted to watch. It was The Dark Crystal. Does anyone remember that film? It's like a weird Jim Henson puppet film that was actually it was very dark. So I don't know why I liked it. But it was because it was the only video. He had documentaries on otters and stuff, and I didn't want to see that. So that was the one. Always used to watch that. Why was it so special? It was because it was the only place on earth I got to see that. Only place on earth I got to see that. And then time came to go home, and Grandad had a drawer. Has any of the granddads here got a drawer, grandparents? It was full of sweets. Later on, it was full of cash as well, which is, some of you are still like, what's cash? You're like, okay. It's physical money. And Grandad used to go to his drawer at the end of our time with him, and he used to rustle around in the drawer for a bit, and he'd be like, coming, and he put something in your hands, a bag of sweets or some pocket money, isn't it? So there you go. It was an awesome time. It was lovely to go to their house, but I had to learn that it wasn't really the stuff that they gave me that was the best. That's what I used to think when I was younger. Look at all the stuff they give me. It's amazing. And that's what I used to love going. I had to learn the hard way that it wasn't the stuff they gave me that was actually the best. When I was a teenager, I really hurt my grandparents because they arranged to travel a long way to come and see us. And I said, I don't want any of the stuff they give anymore. And I arranged to go out and do something else. It really hurt them. And more on that later. But the stuff they gave me as I grew up, I lost interest in. And I ended up being moody. I don't want to go and see them anymore. Why do I have to go and see my grandparents? The place they lived lost its, like, shine, if you like. But what about the place where God lives? That must be an incredible place, right? The place where God lives. And the sons of Korah who write this psalm, they say, how lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. So thinking about the place where God lives, where does God live? In heaven, right? In heaven. And they're thinking about heaven, and they're like, grandparents' house is amazing. The place where they live is incredible. But what about the place where God lives? What about the highest heaven? Beyond the stars, beyond all the galaxies, the home where God lives, where the Father and Jesus, his Son, and the Spirit, where they live. That must be awesome. That must be incredible. That must be really lovely. And John tries to explain it in Revelation, doesn't he? And do you ever get the impression when you read Revelation that he kind of runs out of words almost, doesn't he? He's trying to describe heaven. Like, it's just so beautiful, isn't it? And you've got like this city coming down that's dressed as a bride, and there's no more tears and no more suffering and no more death. And it's incredible. He says, where God lives, his home is absolutely amazing. But there is a place where God lives on earth. We all like to think about heaven, don't we, where Jesus is and where those who've trusted in him are going to live forever with him in the new heavens and new earth. We love to think about that. But did you know that there is a place that God lives, not just on earth, there's a place where God lives in Barry. Well, I'd like to see that, because if you look around in Barry, it doesn't feel like he lives here. Well, what I want you to do is this. Look at the person next to you this morning. If they know Jesus, the Bible says God lives in them. God lives in his church. There is a place on earth where God lives. And so they're not just thinking, the people who write this psalm, they are thinking about heaven, but they're also thinking about elsewhere. They're thinking about church. Now, not the building. You have a much brighter, like Kevin and Anna have an amazing taste in decorating stuff, don't they? And whoever's here, better than me in Bethel. You have a lovely decorated building, but we're not talking about that. You can come here and the building is empty and it doesn't feel the same, does it? It's you when you come in. God lives in each one of you. And when you come in, God lives in his church. What an amazing thing that God teaches, isn't it? And it's real. How many times have you come to church feeling like you don't want to be here? Feeling ashamed of something you did or said in the week? Feeling terrible about yourself? Feeling dirty? Feeling dark? And one of the members of Princes Street has smiled at you. I had several of them. I don't know if you have to be called Matt to be on the door maybe, but I had several of them smile at me on the way in this morning. And what are you doing as you welcome? Who is welcoming through you? Jesus is. Because his Spirit lives in you. So as you came in this morning, you had a welcome. Don't think it was just somebody saying, oh, it's good to see you. God was saying to you through that person, it's good to see you in my house. You're so welcome here today. And he comes running out to meet you. He's excited that you're here. And we're like, oh, so there is a place on earth where God lives in his church, and that place is meant to be like heaven on earth. Princes Street Evangelical Baptist Church, every Sunday when you gather, is meant to be a taste of heaven on earth. How lovely is God's dwelling place, the place where he lives. How lovely is Princes Street Evangelical Baptist Church, not the building, you, the place where he lives in all the Christians here. And what does he do? Every Sunday, Jesus turns up and he brings forgiveness and help and comfort to you every week, doesn't he, in Princes Street? Church should be like heaven on earth. I remember I went for an interview to be a pastor in London. Another pastor was retiring. This was before I was in Bethel. And he said, what's your view on church? No pressure in an interview. So I said, it should be like heaven on earth. Sadly, he said this. That's a bit steep, isn't it? It's a bit steep. Have you seen the people in church? I have. But you should set your vision as high as Jesus sets his. And haven't you known tastes of heaven on earth on a Sunday when you've come in and gathered together? When Jesus has met you, when he's cleaned you up, when he's forgiven your sin that you've done that week, when he's sent you back out full of refreshment and everything you need. How lovely is your dwelling place, O Lord Almighty. Church can't be like that. You might think, oh, see, your trip to your grandparents' house, that was a stupid childish dream, that was, wasn't it? When you were a kid, you were like blinded by all the bribes, wasn't it? The sweets and everything. Now you're a man. You see through that. Well, as a teenager, I thought I did. And you could say the same about church, isn't it? See, my first few Sundays in church, it was amazing. But then the reality kicks in and it just becomes boring and rubbish. I get fed up of all the sweets and the coffee machine at the back and everything else. Well, let me tell you another little story. In 2010, my granddad was dying, and I went to visit him in his sheltered accommodation in Surrey. It's very posh, lived in Surrey. There was no video. There was no sweets. There was no dinner. There was no drawer full of goodies. And yet, it was probably the most incredible time I've ever known on earth. I literally came away with goosebumps. The atmosphere was electric. What was he doing? He was just sat in his chair, and he couldn't even get up out of his chair because he was so old. What happened then? He spoke to me for about 2 hours about everything Jesus had done for him his entire life. And he'd been a Christian a long time. And I couldn't believe it. I used to think I knew my granddad. Sweets and videos and treats, and there was lots of love. But I think that was the time I really got to know him for who he was at the deepest level. It was the most incredible thing ever. Hours of hearing how Jesus had forgiven him. Jesus had helped him. Jesus had picked him up after he'd fallen. Jesus had comforted him. Jesus had given him wisdom when he didn't know what to do. Jesus had helped him in his marriage with all his children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Jesus who'd helped him in church when he preached. Jesus who'd carried him when he couldn't carry himself. Jesus who would never let him go, even though he let go of Jesus sometimes. And it was the most incredible thing ever. It's electric. Goosebumps. It was him at the deepest level. And even though I'd hurt him when I was younger as a teenager, I was able to say, Granddad, I'm so sorry. He said, I forgave you ages ago. And just seeing Jesus' love through that man was absolutely amazing. And I learned then to see through all the stuff he gave me, to actually see knowing him was the best thing. It was him I wanted. And I'd wasted so much time. I wish I'd known about this sooner. And I could have if I'd have asked, but I was too obsessed by what he gave me, wasn't it? What he had. I want your stuff. And then almost when it was too late, I learned. But fortunately, Jesus gave me that time, that half a day where he just poured out his heart. And I got to know him. And it was like, oh, I want him. He's the reason why the sweets tasted so good. He's the reason why going there was so amazing. He is the reason why that house was filled with such love, because Jesus was working through him. As you grow as a Christian, you start to see this. And a good sign that you are growing is this, that you want more and more and more of Jesus. And everything in church he sets up is amazing and is lush. But you're meant to see him through it all and yearn for him and desire him more than ever. You might only have 3 people in the room, yet it can be heaven on earth. Why? Because Jesus is there living in you, showing off who he is, showing off his compassion and his grace and his love. And this guy who's writing this psalm, in verse 3, he's looking out in the temple, the building that's been made to picture church, and he sees this little sparrow flying around. In my old church in Swansea, a pigeon flew in through the window, and it got shot with a nail gun. It didn't get treated very well, but not in the temple. This is a little sparrow flying in the temple, flying around. Where's it going to land? Where's it going to make its nest? Where's it going to make its home? And he says, he's like, even the sparrow has found a home in the temple, in God's house. She's even made a little nest for herself where she can have children and they be raised up and be protected and be helped in church. Where is that place? Near your altar. That's where. Well, what can this little sparrow see from her nest with her little chicks? The altar was an absolute mess. If you read the Bible, what happens at the altar is this. Animals get sacrificed all day long. Their blood pours everywhere. Their carcasses get burnt. What a place to go on holiday, isn't it? Have you ever booked a place on holiday with a view and you've been there really disappointed? People write that, don't they, on their blogs and on their YouTube channels, isn't it? Look, I was promised a view. Look at this. Look at what I've got. And it's like all rubbish everywhere with rats, isn't it? And they're like, I didn't pay for that. And this little sparrow, she's flutting around. She's made a nest in God's house. And what can she see? An absolute mess. Blood everywhere. Carcasses everywhere. All this ash and smoke going in her eyes all day. But the point is this. It's someone else's carcass, not hers. And that's the point of the altar. The altar in the temple here is like an early version of the cross. It's picturing the cross where Jesus became an absolute mess, if I can say it like that. Why? To clean up yours. It's an amazing thought, isn't it? Don't sort of like do the British thing we do, isn't it? Make it all polite and tidy. You can come into church in an absolute mess, and you can meet Jesus, and he can put you back together again. And he can clean up a whole lifetime's worth of guilt, frustration, regret, wasted years. You feel whatever, however you've come in, darkness, and not knowing where you're going. You come into church and you see Jesus and you're like, it's an absolute mess. What you'll see is other people here, an absolute mess. And that's a good thing you see that. Because what can they do then? They will point you to Jesus, who became a bloodied mess to save you from all your sin. It's an amazing thought, isn't it? So when you come into church, you're like, what am I going to see today? That's the one thing you should long to see. I want to see Jesus. I want to see what he has done for me, not in some polite way. He has come down into my mess. He's become everything, all my guilt, all my shame, all my frustration, all my sin, and he has tasted my death and my hell in my place so that I can sit here alive this morning like that sparrow and fly. He's become my complete mess to clean all my mess up. That's what he does, isn't it? Every Sunday in church. You come in pieces and he puts you back together again. You come in confused and he shines the light and shows you the way. You come in not knowing what to do and he pours out wisdom. It's all the amazing, all the stuff he gives me. But don't forget, it's Jesus himself who does that, isn't it? He is the best thing about Princess Street. He's the best thing about Bethel, whichever church you go to. There is a place for you here. I've met so many people. I'm not good enough to be a Christian. Do you know that's the very thing that qualifies you to be one? Not feeling worthy or good enough. You're actually further ahead in Jesus' eyes of someone who says, oh, I've not done anything wrong. Someone who comes in to the back today and says, I feel too ashamed to even say what I've done. Jesus says, if you ask him today, he will forgive you for everything. And you can go home a new person. Jesus can do that for you today. And what does Jesus say? If you're doubting that, remember Peter? Peter was always a bit of a big mouth, wasn't he, as a Christian? And he said to Jesus, when he found out Jesus was going to die, he said, Jesus, I'll follow you even if I have to die with you. And Jesus says, no, I tell you the truth. Before the cock crows 3 times, you're going to deny me. You ever knew me? Now, if someone was going to treat you that way, what would your next words to them be? Probably not repeatable here in church, is it, if we're honest? I'm thinking something in my head and my heart, what I'd tell them if they betrayed me like that, if they denied me like that, a good friend of mine, if they pretended they never knew me and weren't there when I needed them, what were Jesus' next words to Peter? Do not let your heart be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house there are many rooms, and I go there to prepare a place for you, Peter, who's about to deny me. And if I go there to prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. There's still heaven for you, Peter. Still a place in my house for you, even though you fail every single day, even though you're filled with like this great sense of what an amazing Christian you are. It all depends on Jesus. What does Jesus say in Matthew 10? By the way, you are worth more than many sparrows. If there's a place for a little sparrow in church, there's a place for you. He knows how many hairs are on your head. He loves you so much. There's a famous old hymn which says this: Jesus, keep me near the cross. There a precious fountain, free to all, a healing stream, flows from Calvary's mountain. In the cross, be my glory ever, till my ransomed soul shall find rest beyond the river. That's what you want to see when you come into church, what Jesus has done for you. Near the cross, a trembling soul, love and mercy found me. There the bright and morning star shed his beams around me. It should feel like the light comes on when you come into church. Near the cross, in the cross, be my glory ever. It's the best thing, isn't it? What Jesus has done. And what happens? God can do the most incredible but weird things for us. When I saw Grandad that day, he just poured out his heart, and I said it was like I got to know him properly for the first time, who he really is, or who really is our God. Well, later on down in the Psalm at the end of verse 8, he says, he's given a title, he's given God of Jacob. God of Jacob. That's just not like a posh title. It tells us who he is, the God of Jacob. Have you ever read Jacob's life in the Bible? He totally messed it up, didn't he? Let's not be polite. When I used to knock people's doors in Swansea to try and invite them to church, to give them a bit of the Bible, and this one guy, I gave him some Bible notes, and then I didn't see him for a year, and then I knocked his door, and he said, I've read them all, I'm ready to talk. He said, come in and sit down. I thought, oh, great. We're going to get to talk about Jesus. Do you know his first question to me? Why are all the characters in the Bible such losers who fail all the time? But they're like held up there as like these awesome people. What a question. He obviously got it, didn't he? And the point was this: all of them did fail. They were all sinners. But they trusted in a great Savior. They trusted in Jesus. And Jacob is one of those, isn't it? His name literally means to trick people, to trip them up, to grab their heel. I've got a younger brother, and we spent our childhood doing that all the time. Our trick was not literally to grab each other's heels, but when one was walking by, you hide and then knee them in the leg as hard as you can. Give them a dead leg so they're like limping for the rest of the day. That's what brothers do, isn't it? And Jacob was no different with Esau, was he? Constantly getting each other. And Jacob, from the moment he was born, he manipulated others and all the circumstances around him to get his own way. And he did it again. He hurt his brother. He hurt his dad. He deceived his dad. He hurt his whole family. He had to run away. And then Jesus gave him this awesome dream of a ladder stretching between heaven and earth, which is Jesus, by the way, who joins heaven and earth back together. And Jesus makes him this promise. He says, I'm going to be with you. I'm going to watch over you. I'm going to bring you back to this place. I will not leave you until I've done what I promised. And do you know what Jacob says? If you do that, well, maybe, I'm changing the words slightly, but this is the heart of it. If you do that, well, maybe I'll believe in you. If you do that, maybe you'll be my God. After you've proved yourself to me. The cheek of it, isn't it? And then he goes on, and he still messes up, doesn't he? In fact, Jesus has to come down and have a fight with him one night, doesn't it? Do you remember that bit? He wrestles with God, doesn't he, in the dark? And it looks like he's winning to start with. He fights him so hard, isn't it? Because he's used to living his life trying to manipulate all the circumstances to get his own way. Now he's fighting with God. He's fought with other people. He's fought with his brother. Now he's fighting with God. And it looks like he's going to win. But then Jesus just touches his hip and he goes down and he's clinging on now to Jesus. And Jesus says, that's what you were meant to be doing all along. Just trusting, holding on to me, not pushing me away all the time, fighting me, fighting God. Well, God says, I'm the God of that man. I'm the God of Jacob. What sort of God could be his God? Someone who is very patient, yeah? Someone who is very kind. Someone who is very loving. Someone who's very forgiving. Someone who can take our plans that we use to manipulate and try and get our own way and turn them into good. Not just for ourselves, but our families and everyone in the town and the community around us. The God of Jacob has to be the most incredibly amazing, powerful, loving, forgiving God you've ever heard of. To be the God of a man like that. And what happens? Jacob, at the end of his life, this is what he says. Genesis 47, he says, the years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of my fathers. So he said, I've been on a long pilgrimage. It's mostly been miserable, and I haven't lived as long as some other people. That's how he sums up his life. He's a bit miserable, isn't he, really? If we got to 130, we'd say we'd had quite a long life. Had all sorts of adventures, but that's his sort of mindset that he's saying. But what happens? As you read Jacob's life in the Bible, what happens to you? You get comfort from it, right? You get hope from it. You get to see what your Savior is really like, yeah? Because you get to see through Jacob's suffering and all his manipulation, how patient and loving Jesus is. And how he can carry someone through them fighting against God most of their life. How he can change their heart. How he can smash them to rebuild them back into something more amazing, more incredible. And this is what this verse is talking about here. In church, you get to see the most amazing thing. Verse 5, blessed are those whose strength is in you. They've set their hearts on pilgrimage. As they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a place of springs. The autumn rains also cover it with pools. The valley of Baca is the valley of tears, the valley of suffering, the valley of trials. And what happens? Only Jesus can do this. Another Christian passes through trials and suffering and hardship and death. And what happens? Through all that, you get incredible comfort and hope because you get to see how amazing Jesus is. That's what happens when you read the life of Jacob, yeah? The life of Job, the life of Abraham, the life of David, and you see all their trials and all their sins and all their difficulties and all their conundrums and all their failures and all their things. What do you get to see? How incredible Jesus is. And as they pass through all those valleys, what happens? Comfort for you. Only Jesus can do that. What happens when you read the life of the person who suffered the most in the whole universe? Who went through the deepest darkness? Who went through the biggest trials? The most amount of suffering this world has ever seen? What happens when you read Jesus' life? Well, you think this, isn't it? There's got to be hope for me. There's got to be help for me. Look at that. Look how the Father carries Jesus through that. Look how he raises him up after it looks like he's been forsaken. Look at him. Amazing comfort for you. Now, what we tend to do in church is when we suffer and when we go through trials, we kind of turn a bit inwards, don't we? Get a bit selfish. What we need to do is see that Jesus does something incredibly mind-blowing. As you suffer as a Christian here in Princess Street, as you go through hardships and trials and pain, what happens? The rest of the body of Jesus, the church around you, receives comfort. Why? Because they get to see the grace that Jesus pours out on you and helps you with, and it helps them to face tomorrow. says in the Bible, praise be to the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of what? All comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. Sounds like a tongue twister, right, to start with. But basically, there's comfort being poured out on everyone who loves Jesus, on every Christian. And what happens? That comfort overflows. Where? To the rest of the church. So you get hope to live for tomorrow. So you can fly again like that sparrow. So you can dream big dreams and dream as big as Jesus has for your life. And know forgiveness and hope. Know there's help when there's deep suffering. So you can never be alone or ever say, Jesus doesn't understand what I'm going through. Why? Because there's hundreds of other Christians around you who get his help every day. And that comfort, by being friends with them in church, overflows to you as well. I used to be scared of dying. Not the actual moment, but I think the process. And then in Bethel, some of you might remember, we had Vernon and Mostyn and Sylvia and Peggy. And some of them died very painful deaths. And what did I see? Peace, calm, stillness, comfort. In one of them, excitement, breathlessness to go and be with Jesus, which is better by far. And that's gone now. I'm not scared of it anymore, because the comfort that Jesus comforted them with, I can see is coming to me one day. I don't know how, I can't explain it, but he promises it to all of us. Your pilgrimage brings comfort to others. Your suffering and trials, don't get caught up in yourself. See what Jesus can turn it into for the rest of the church. No wonder then, and we're wrapping it up now, no wonder, he says in verse 10, better is one day, just one day. Think of the best day you've ever had. Best day you've ever had in your life. And this is what he's doing. Better is one day in your courts. Better is one day in church. Better is one Sunday with other Christians than 1,000 anywhere else. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of the wicked. What's he saying? I'm willing to do anything in church if I get to see that. If I get to see Jesus tidying up my mess, and I get comfort from all the other Christians' suffering and trials, and then when I go through it, they get comfort from mine, because Jesus is amazing, incredibly powerful, and amazingly, that's what he can do. Better is one day in church, in his courts where he lives, than 1,000 elsewhere. I'd rather be in church on a Sunday than anywhere else in the entire world. Why? Because church is the only place where you get to see Jesus like that. It's an amazing thought. We got to see, I know Anthony and Dave they used to like going to National Trust places, so we got to go to Blenheim Palace. There we are, their eyes lit up. Blenheim Palace, back in Easter, okay? It basically, if you don't like history, this is what it is, okay? It's a huge palace built because somebody won an amazing victory in Europe in a war that basically turned Europe around, okay? I love reading all the stuff for hours, and my kids are like, Dad, you're always reading all the stuff. Come on, let's go on the park. Let's go elsewhere. I'm like, no, I'm reading it. And this is what I found out. It was the place where Winston Churchill was born, the place where he grew up. And as he grew up in this palace that was built to commemorate this huge victory in Europe, he got inspired by what he saw. And all the speeches, all the famous speeches you hear him say in that heroic way, isn't it, in his own way, whether you like him or not, whether you liked his politics or not, those speeches, what are they done? They're inspired by the surroundings, by where he lived, by soaking in all the history of that place and hearing all the stories of his great-great-granddad and how he'd won this amazing victory in Europe. All the tactics he'd used, Winston took inspiration from, and it was growing up in that atmosphere that inspired him to be the man he became. What about you? I only live in Barry. No, you don't. You live in the house of the living God here, surrounded by his love and his life and his power. And there's hope for our town because of Jesus. And we should be filled with inspiration from Jesus, isn't it? That he loves sinners, that he'll forgive anyone who comes to him, that anyone can become a Christian. There's hope. Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I'd do anything in church. I'll clean the toilets if I get to see how amazing Jesus is. I'll welcome on the door. I'll serve the coffee, or most annoying thing about those, isn't it? I'll refill it with milk. Do you know that? You want a coffee and then it beeps because it runs. I'll do that in church. I'll do anything. Why? Because Jesus is here. And when he's here, it's like heaven on earth. Ephesians 3:10 says this. His intent, that's God, God's plan, God's intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms. Why is Princess Street Evangelical Baptist Church here? To show off the glory of Jesus to our dying town. To show off his wisdom. I can't do that. You already do if you know Jesus. I don't know the words to say to my workmates. It doesn't matter. You look like Jesus to them. He already fills you with his life and his love. And they're what? Don't be like intimidated, but they are watching you in work. They're watching you and your family to see what's going on. Don't think you have to be Superman or Superwoman, but do point them to Jesus. What an amazing privilege. Why would I rather do anything in church? Because this is where Jesus is a sun and a shield. He gives out favor and honor. Now we've got to the heart of it, isn't it? That God lives here by his Spirit through Jesus in our hearts. In church, he's a sun and a shield. He glows with such love and help and hope and life. Everyone said this week, until it got a bit too hot, didn't they? It was great to see the sun back again, wasn't it? Until you couldn't think because it's so hot. Did anyone else do that this week? Sit there, I can't think about anything because it's too hot. But to start with the sun, and now we're saying it's great to see the sun back to how we feel it should be. But in church, Jesus is a sun. His love warms our hearts. He makes us glow like him. He bestows grace. He pours out help that we could never deserve or earn. And he honors Christians in church. He lifts us up, doesn't he, with such honor? He calls us royalty. And he treats us like royalty here in Barry, in Princess Street. If you're not a Christian, isn't it time to give up living elsewhere and come and live with Jesus in his church? He's died for you. You can trust him today and know him. And as we come around the table now, that's what this meal is preaching to you this morning. This bit of bread, Jesus is saying, I was willing to carry all of your sins in my body. I was willing to be torn apart for you. And this juice underneath, they are cool communion cups, by the way. The juice underneath, I got to figure out how to use them, but the juice underneath is showing you that he literally poured out his life to bring you life. He poured out every drop of blood for you to bring you new life.